Good day, Father Matt Williams here in my parked car. I hope you're well. We're reading from Book 4, Chapter 10 of The Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempis. This chapter is Holy Communion is not lightly to be omitted. So he wants us to recognize that in this daily bread that is celebrated and given to us at every Mass, celebrated daily throughout the entire world, the riches of what awaits us in the Eucharist, of who awaits us in the Eucharist. He says, "Thou oughtest often to have recourse to the fountain of grace, the Eucharist, and of divine mercy, the Eucharist, to the fountain of all goodness and all purity, that thou mayest be healed of thy passions and vices." Think about that. In celebrating Mass, communion, it heals us of our vices and our passions, those passions that are disordered, right? And be made more strong and vigilant against all the temptations and deceits of the devil. So Jesus comes to us as daily bread, right? The Eucharist and the Word of God. The Word of God is our daily bread as well. The Eucharist, though, is the daily bread par excellence. It's the Word made flesh. And the Lord wants to strengthen us through the Eucharist against our temptations. This is all part of living for heaven, right? The Eucharist is so important. And he says that the enemy knows very well the great advantage and remedy which is in the Holy Eucharist. So he strives, the enemy, the devil, by all means and occasions, as much as he is able, to withdraw and hinder faithful and devout persons from it. So if you're ever tempted not to go to Mass on Sunday, or you're tempted to sin gravely, so you're like, I don't know if I'm going to Mass because I can't really receive or something like that is the devil unleashing on you to keep you from the Eucharist. The devil wants us to stay away from the Eucharist because he knows the power that is there. So this Lenten journey should empower us to recommit ourselves to Sunday Eucharist, making that the principal act of worship of our week. I would encourage you, and as would Thomas à Kempis, to consider going to daily Mass. If you can't go to daily Mass, make a spiritual communion each day. He says this about spiritual communion, right? He says that for he communicates mystically, talking about spiritual communion, and is invisibly fed as often as he devoutly calls to mind the mystery of the incarnation and passion of Christ and is inflamed with the love of him. So in other words, you can unite yourself with the Eucharist present in the tabernacle, a tabernacle, think of your church or any chapel, or the Eucharist of St. Peter's. Unite yourself with Christ present in the Eucharist there, wherever that chapel is. Recall his incarnation when he became flesh. Recall his passion, death, and resurrection, his paschal mystery. Unite yourself with the Eucharist, with that saving mystery, and offer yourself to the Lord. Ask him to come into your heart. Unite in a holy communion spiritually, and then go forth in flame with the love of God. So even though you can't get to Mass every day, you can always take a moment to step aside, and make a spiritual communion. But I encourage you, try to get to daily Mass. Most importantly, making Sunday Mass the supreme act of worship, of sacrifice, of prayer for you in your week. We are to be a Eucharistic people, and it is in the Eucharist, staying united to the Eucharist, that we are healed, that we are strengthened, we are blessed and fortified against the evil one, but to live with the love of God for heaven, our true home. God bless you.